Primetime local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. 4 more people who tested positive for COVID-19 have died. 3 deaths were in the Saskatchewan zone and 1 in Regina. There are 213 new cases in the province, with 8 in the northwest. 3 of those are in the immediate Lloydminster area, where we have 104 active cases. There are 2,443 active cases in Saskatchewan. 184 people are in hospital, with 6 in the northwest. Almost 416,000 vaccine doses have been administered province-wide, with close to 29,000 of those doses in the northwest. The government has also expanded visitation to certain eligible and long-term personal care homes. Restrictions around graduations, sports, performing arts, and outdoor seating areas have also been changed. City Council has selected a contractor for the Supplemental Water Sewer Replacement Program. Jace Mackey has more.
The city will be replacing the sanitary sewer main on 48th Avenue between 42nd and 43rd Street. The existing infrastructure is in failing condition and must be removed and replaced.
And what's happened is, I believe it's clay tiles, the term used, has collapsed. And because of that, it's not serving the purpose that it needs to be. It was raised and the question was asked, could we recondition what's in the ground in a different way rather than opening it up? And the response from administration was no, it was not able to be done that way.
City Council has selected ASL Paving of Lloydminster as a contractor of the project, with a bid just over $390,000 and a 15% contingency of $59,000.
The contingency is there to allow a project to move forward with if a snag does come along. And if you'll notice, the 15% stays within budget. Had the bid been higher and we'd accept a higher bid, the contingency would only been 10%. It's been what's budgeted is what works for the contingency. So in this case, there's room for a 15% contingency. Administration asks for it. Sometimes it's 10, 5, 7. So that number moves.
The city will be in touch with residents and businesses in the area to ensure minimal disruption. This project is different than other sewer and water projects that have been completed in the city, since there is no water line in the block. The project could be completed in just over a week, depending on weather.
It will be something that moves a lot faster, partly because there is only one line. So when you're digging, you're not carefully digging, so you disconnect water versus sewer and things like that. So the administration indicated that it could be 7 to 10 days of good construction weather, and I always emphasize good construction weather. They could have the clay back down and starting to get compacted. So the neighborhood hopefully will experience very little discomfort and displeasure with maintenance, but it's required, and it will be a finished paved street when it's done.
Construction on the project is expected to be completed September 3rd. For Primetime Local News, I'm Jace Mackey.
In this week's Beyond the Classroom, we take a look at a Holy Rosary High School student who recently committed to an Ontario university for rowing. Grade 12 student Elijah Lopez committed to Brock University in Ontario, where he will be rowing for the varsity men's heavyweight team. Lopez says the university first reached out to him and they had great conversations.
I really liked how engaging they were. So just seeing how well they've done in the past years, and it was a great opportunity, and I just had to take it.
Over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been difficult for a lot of people to stay encouraged while practicing the sport they love. Without many teammates, Lopez needed to find ways to keep himself inspired.
I'm the only person that's really rowing out of Lloydminster right now, because the other Lloydminster rower, Shelby Lane, she's rowing out of Saskatoon with the team. So I'm all by myself, so it's really just needing to find my own motivation and being able to sit on the rowing machine every day for an hour and a half and really get through it.
Lopez placed 7th in the 2021 Canadian Indoor Rowing Championship, and he's hoping his time at Brock University will help refine his rowing skills.
I'm excited to go. I know I'll definitely not be the fastest, but just being able to watch my improvement and just watch my times go down, getting faster, I think with all the extra coaching, it should make me improve substantially.
And that's it for this week's Beyond the Classroom.
Beyond the Classroom is brought to you by Lakeland College, home to the most hands-on education in Canada. Apply today and graduate job ready.
The Canadian Armed Forces is confirming it's aware American helicopters are in the area. The choppers were spotted landing and taking off several times from the helipads atop the University of Alberta and Royal Alexandra hospitals. The Canadian Armed Forces says the helicopters will be taking part in Exercise Maple Resolve in Wainwright. Those flights were part of training to familiarize the crews with the medical facilities in the area. Exercise Maple Resolve is an annual exercise at CFB Wainwright designed to prepare soldiers for deployment. The COVID situation in Ontario has grown exponentially over the last couple of months, with cases averaging around over 3,000 per day. Connor Chan speaks with an Ontario doctor for a look at how Ontario has been handling their COVID situation.
Well, I'm very pleased to be joined with here today on Primetime Local News with Dr. Nelson Chan. He joins me from Ontario. Dr. Chan, first off, thank you for joining us. And I know the city that you're in is not a major hotspot, but I would like for you to give our viewers just a scope of how chaotic the COVID situation really is in Ontario.
Oh, I think we're well into the third wave at this point, and we're not quite seeing an end in sight. We're supporting. We're obviously supporting the province and the city, but we are accepting patients being transferred from the hotspots like in Toronto and coming to our major hospitals. So yeah, it is definitely getting worse.
In your opinion, what could have been done better in the province to prevent the numbers from being what they are now?
I don't think to be honest, I don't think there's an easy answer. I think, there's different pros and cons that we need to weigh, from a strictly, just to strictly stop the virus. I do think that we would probably have needed more, stricter physical distancing rules and perhaps more stringent rules during the lockdown. So I think that would have helped, but we obviously need to balance that with those who are affected and both, especially the mental health aspects of feeling, isolated and feeling lonely as a result of these lockdown rules.
Do you think Ontario will dig themselves out of this hole that they're in right now?
I do believe that. I think there is some signs. I think I feel like the province, I think as a whole, healthcare professionals are overstretched, but we continue to work hard and we are starting to coordinate with other hospitals. And like I said, examples of transferring patients from hotspots to places like here in London will help offload those patients that can then make room for COVID patients.
Now, you yourself are, of course, a family physician, and you've administered many COVID vaccines in Ontario. What are some things that your patients are saying to you or that are hesitant about when it comes to getting their COVID vaccine?
I think it's a great question. The way we're rolling out vaccines, I'm not as familiar with how other provinces are doing. Is that I think in the very I think the initial efforts have been to create mass vaccination clinics, and I've participated. I've worked in some of these mass vaccination clinics. So they've kind of left, and then they rolled out to the pharmacies. I do think that primary care, so family medicine clinics, have an important role to play, and I think they're trying to get us on board now. Is sort of like the second or the third wave, I guess, and. I guess going back to your earlier questions, I think if primary care was involved a little bit earlier in terms of the vaccine rollout, I think you would maybe see higher uptake. I think a lot of vaccine hesitancy can be alleviated when you're being vaccinated by people who already know you, who already know your medical history, and I think that's the piece that's been missing. And there's been some studies that have shown that. That patients are more likely to trust their family physicians when it comes to questions like vaccines.
Can you put it into perspective for us, for people that choose not to get the vaccine, and just how things could possibly escalate further of the spread of COVID, not just in Ontario, but also across Canada?
I actually think that the main problem right now has more to do with vaccine availability. I think that seems to be the point. That seems to be kind of like the bottleneck, so to speak. I don't see as much vaccine hesitancy. Certainly, I have just had a lot of discussions with my patients, and as they have questions about vaccines, their questions, a lot of their questions has to do with not so much whether to vaccinate, but really about which vaccine. And as you know, there's been a lot of discussion around the safety of certain types of certain vaccines that are out there, and I think they are particularly concerned about that. I think as soon as the supply becomes available, I think then we'll have a better idea of vaccine hesitancy, because right now those who are hesitant are probably around that age where they tend to be a bit younger, and so they're not quite qualified for, say, the Pfizer or the Moderna, but they're qualified for the AstraZeneca. So there is some questions around the safety in their minds.
And lastly, Dr. Chan, what's some advice that you would give to people to help protect themselves right now?
So my advice would be, once you qualify, get in line and get vaccinated as soon as possible, and observe the guidelines that are set forth by your province.
Well, Dr. Chan, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us an insight on the situation in Ontario right now. So thank you.
Now our Shelby Clark will take a first look at your weather. Thanks so much, Jasmine. Taking a first look at our weather in the border city here, we are seeing a little bit of chillier skies today with a high of 9 here in the border city and 12 kilometers an hour winds coming. And for temperatures across central Alberta and Saskatchewan, as you can see, we're ranging from around that double-digit mark all the way to the single-digit mark. Here on the Alberta side, Rocky Mountain House and Red Deer at 14 degrees. Edson's at 11 and Jasper and Edmonton are both at 12 degrees. Whitecourt's at 9 and Athabasca is a bit chillier, as well as Cold Lake of 1 degrees. Now on the Saskatchewan side here, Meadow Lake is still in that minus mark with that -1 right now, but Prince Albert's at 4 degrees. Melford's at 6 and Saskatoon is at 12 degrees, and in North Battleford they are sitting at a high of 14. Now in North Battleford overnight they're going to be dropping to -3 overnight, but with a lot cloudier skies. But tomorrow hopefully they will pick it back up, sitting at 11 tomorrow, but they probably won't be seeing too much sun. Now in Cold Lake overnight they'll be going to -6 overnight as well with cloudier skies, but tomorrow they will be picking it back up to a high of 9, and they may not see too much sun either. Now here in Lloydminster overnight we're going to be going to -3, dropping it a bit with as well cloudier skies, but tomorrow we will be going back up to a high of 10, and hopefully we will see some sun peeking behind those clouds later on in the day. Now moving into our 3-day forecast here, Thursday we're going to be seeing a high of 10 with a low of -3, but we're starting off this weekend with that 20-digit mark at a high of 22 on Friday with a little bit more sun, but we will see around a 45% chance of some precipitation on Friday moving into the weekend. And on Saturday we're going to see a high of 15 and a low of 5, but we will see some cloudier skies on Saturday, and as we move into next week hopefully we will pick it back up and get a little bit into those warmer temperatures there. That is a first look at your weather forecast. We'll have more news coming up after the break. Ahead of Thursday night's NFL draft, Connor Chan and Evan Kenny sit down to chat about some potential first-round action.
Well, I'm joined with Evan Kenny as we're looking ahead to the NFL draft later this week. And Evan, some few topics to talk about. We'll get to the obvious one, which is the quarterbacks, in just a little bit here. But the surprising storyline of the draft, or I guess one of them, is the lack of defensive prospects there is this year. I mean, there are a few guys that stand out, but normally we see guys in the defensive range that usually are in that top 5. So I guess why is there not a lot of defensive prospects this year?
Yeah, Connor, you're 100% right there. Just even, you mentioned the top 5. Looking at that top 10, it doesn't really seem like there are a ton of, high-end defensive prospects when it does come to that top 10. Patrick Surtain too, and J.C. Horn as well, Micah Parsons. Those are kind of those top 3 guys, depending on what teams are looking for. Depends if they want a cornerback or a linebacker in those positions. Connor, it's not as much, I guess, that there's a lack of this defensive depth. There's just more offensive skill in this draft class. Like you said, we'll get to it in a couple minutes here, but the quarterbacks and the wide receivers are just out of this world when it comes to this draft class. So, obviously you're picking those players ahead of these defensive guys. Connor, just looking at past drafts here, last year, half of the picks in that top 10 were defensive players. Going back to 2019, 7 of the top 10 were defensive players. And then in 2018, only 3 of those top 10 were defensive players. But Denzel Ward was taken 4th overall, sort of to counteract that, unlike this year. So it will be a little bit different this season versus past years.
Yeah, and of course, we'll obviously talk about depth as well later on. But of course, you're right. It's all about what a team needs. Now, speaking of what teams needs, there's several teams that need a quarterback, like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are expected to take Trevor Lawrence 1 and Zach Wilson from the Jets at number 2. But the story begins at number 3, Evan. There was, at the beginning of the year, it was Justin Fields. Now, getting towards the draft, it's leaning towards Mac Jones. Where do you see the number 3 slot going? Where do you see who's going to take number 3, or which quarterback's going to go at number 3, as where is some of those other guys ranked down in the first round?
Yeah, Connor, you mentioned Justin Fields, Mac Jones. There's also Trey Lance sort of as that third horse in this race. Now, Trey Lance, in my opinion, isn't quite at that same caliber that those other 2 quarterbacks are at. And when it comes to those other 2 quarterbacks in Fields and Mac Jones, is basically what kind of quarterback does your team need? Now, the San Francisco 49ers, with that 3rd pick, they gave up a lot of capital to move up there. They gave up the number 12 pick this season. In 2022, they'll give up a 1st and a 3rd round pick. And as well in 2023, they're also giving up a 1st round pick. Now, Connor, in my opinion, when a team's giving up this much and has this much at stake, they're not drafting a quarterback similar to the one they have in Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, that's sort of a pocket passing type quarterback. No offense to Mac Jones, but that's exactly what Mac Jones is. I just don't see him getting taken here. Justin Fields, to me, is the more interesting prospect, especially at the number 3 position with San Francisco. You got to remember, San Francisco was absolutely plagued this year by injuries. They're not nearly as bad as of a team as this number 3 pick, or even, in my opinion, the number 12 pick that they originally had. So Justin Fields gives them a great element of being a mobile quarterback, but he also gives you similar numbers to what Mac Jones does. Now, his completion percentage is lower than what Mac Jones's was this past season, but if you look over, their entire career throughout the NCAA there, I would say Justin Fields has been the better quarterback. Connor, another issue, I guess, with taking Justin Fields at that number 3 position there, Ohio State quarterbacks have not panned out, especially as of late. So NFL teams will obviously be watching for that, and, it will be obviously a question. But for me, if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I'm taking Justin Fields with that 3rd pick.
And it's going to be interesting to see if they do take Mac Jones at number 3 and how far, I guess the storyline is going to be if they take Mac Jones at 3, how far will Justin Fields fall to 15, maybe to the Patriots, who are contenders to trade up as well, maybe the Broncos. That I know they've had time to look at Trey Lance as a potential pick there as well. But just on the last topic here, Evan, before we wrap things up here, we talked about depth, and there's lots of great offensive depth this year, lots of great wide receivers available, lots of great offensive tackles. So talk about some of the guys that really stayed out to you and could be some really good picks that aren't quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, Connor, when you talk about offensive depth, wide receiver, first thing that jumps off the page, there's three high-end wide receivers in Jamar Chase, Jaylen Waddle, and Devontae Smith. I mean, all three of these guys could arguably be a #1 receiver in the future for any of these NFL teams. I mean, let's first of all talk about Jamar Chase. Last season, he opted out of playing, but he was a part of that national championship team in 2019 with LSU. And Connor, on that team, you had Justin Jefferson, but Jamar Chase was arguably your best receiver. I mean, his hands and just being able to get up and get a ball over defenders is like none other in this draft. Now, talking about Jaylen Waddle, he's an electric player. This year, he was injured, was limited to just 6 games, but in those 6 games, he averaged 21.1 yards per reception. And as well, we've been able to see him do things on his own that, a lot of players aren't able to do, whether that's, punt returns, kick returns. He's able to score in multiple ways there and can help a team in multiple ways. And then finally, Devontae Smith. I mean, it's not very often, that a wide receiver wins the Heisman Trophy. It's been almost 30 years since that happened last, but Devontae Smith was able to do that. We might not even see him go as the top receiver while being the Heisman Trophy winner, just showing how deep this class is. Devontae Smith has had a historic career here at Alabama, whether it's, leading different categories in the SEC or even all-time categories in the NCAA. He's a fantastic route runner, which is his #1 characteristic. The downfall to Devontae Smith is his size. He's only about 170 pounds, and when you're going against cornerbacks who could have up to 40 pounds on them, it is a little bit of a worry there. But nonetheless, all 3 receivers are fantastic. And Connor, that's even without us talking about tight end Kyle Pitts, who's almost just like a glorified receiver in my mind.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Thursday night. The draft is always exciting to watch. Evan, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Connor.
After having their AGM on April 11th, the North Saskatchewan River Baseball League was optimistic in starting their regular season May-long weekend. After the Government of Saskatchewan's announcement on the 26th, the NSRBL will have to reevaluate. The league planned on each team playing each other once before starting playoffs July 5th. The new timetable is hopeful to start in the middle of June. Co-Commissioner Kelvin Collier says if the current COVID situation continues, the league would plan to run similar to last season. As of now, 13 teams are expected to play. Now our Shelby Clark will take another look at your weather forecast.
Thanks so much, Jasmine. Taking a second look at your weather forecast here with temperatures across the region. We're still looking a little bit chillier today, but with the lower parts, they are seeing warmer temperatures compared to parts here in like Lac La Biche is sitting at 0. Cold Lake is at 1 degrees, while Bonnyville, St. Paul are both at 3 degrees. And around that Edmonton and Vegreville range here is Edmonton is at 12 degrees and Vegreville's at 10. And Vermilion and Wainwright are at 11 and 12, while Provost is a bit warmer at that 15-degree mark here. Now on the Saskatchewan side, Isle La Crosse is at 2 degrees, so a little bit chillier, but as well as Green Lake and Meadow Lake, you can see that they're still in that 1-digit range there. Maidstone's at 11 and North Battleford's at 14 and Macklin's the warmest at 17 degrees. Now moving into our northern region here, they're seeing a lot chillier temperatures while most are seeing are at that 0-digit mark. Flin Flon's at a high of 2 and Wollaston Lake, Stony Rapids and Uranium City are at that -degree mark there. Now over on this side, Peace River's at -3 while Grand Prairie's a bit warmer at 3 degrees there. Slave Lake's at -2 and Fort McMurray is at 3 and High Level and Fort Chipewyan are at a high of 2 and 1. Now in our southern region, they are seeing the highest temperatures while Lethbridge and Medicine Hat are sitting at 18 degrees. Calgary and Banff are at 10 and 17 and Coronation is at 13. And on this side, Estevan's at 10 degrees, Moose Jaw is at 13 as well as Swift Current, and Kindersley is at 15, Regina is at 11, and Yorkturn is still a little bit chillier at that 7-degree mark there. But as we look at temperatures overnight across the region, we're still seeing chillier temperatures there in that minus range, but Meadow Lake is at the coldest at -8 overnight. Isle La Crosse is at -5, but Meadow Lake and Isle La Crosse will both be seeing cloudier skies. Pearson is will be at -7, Bonnyville will be at -5. Paradise Hills will be sitting at -4, and Unity will see some precipitation overnight at -3. And Provost and Myrnan will be at a high of 3 in Provost, and Myrna will be at -1, and Wainwright will be at a high of 2. But as we look at temperatures tomorrow, we'll be seeing a lot warmer temperatures, as you can see across the region here, while Isle La Crosse and Lac La Biche will still be a bit colder at 7 degrees. Now looking at our 7-day forecast, Friday we're going to see a high of 22 on Friday with around a 45% chance of some precipitation as we go into the weekend. But on Saturday we'll see a high of 15 and a low of 5 degrees, around still a 40% chance of some precipitation, but we will see a little bit of sun behind those clouds. Sunday will be ending off the weekend with a high of 11, but moving into next week we will see a bit warmer temperatures with a high of 14 on Monday with a little bit of sun behind those clouds, and Tuesday will be a high of 15. And Wednesday will be ending off with a high of 14 on Wednesday, but we will have a high chance of some precipitation as well. That is a second look at your weather forecast. We'll have more news coming up after the break.
Once again this week with Stephanie Dobson. Stephanie is a local lawyer and mediator with Hankin Divorce Law and Mediation. And Stephanie, today we've kind of changed things a little bit. We're not getting into more of the technical side of things with divorce and separation. Well, I guess technical kind of in technology is what we're referring to today. And making a plan for two-parent homes, especially when kids are going back and forth. And it's obviously important that there be some sort of a unity and a unified decision as to how this is going to be handled in both places. So let's start talking about what some of the things are that parents should consider when it comes to use of technology within two separate homes.
Sure. Thanks, Stacey. Yeah, we've been looking at some pretty heavy stuff the last few weeks, so I thought I'd lighten it up by talking about a bit more of a fun topic of technology, one of my favorites. So first, I recommend that parents look at the basic concept of the actual acquisition or the use of a device. So when is the appropriate age that a child will have a device? So we've got cell phones, gaming consoles, laptops, tablets, other kind of electronics. So there are parents where they have completely differing views on what that's going to look like and what age is appropriate. So the best practice, if possible, would be to discuss that between parents before the actual purchase of a device. Otherwise, it can really put kids in between parental conflict pretty darn quickly. So the second piece is the actual use of the device. So now the device has been purchased, and how is that going to actually be used? So as you described a moment ago, having consistent rules between two homes can be really helpful as far as things like even screen time limits, device-free times of the day, or even activities where devices are appropriate or inappropriate. Like, for example, homework. How do we limit the devices during homework time? And even when you've got devices, some are more portable than others. What devices are going to go between homes, and what's going to stay at one home or the other?
Now, if there are going to have to be technology limits placed in each home, what are some of the things that parents should be considering when getting that set up?
Lots of devices, of course, have parental controls where you can parents can monitor the device usage. It's important, though, if possible, for both parents to at least have that override passcode so that if they want to approve or deny app purchases or extra screen time, that sort of thing, that's possible within that parent's home. And ideally, parents can agree on things like content rating. So what 14A, 12, over age 12, whatever that may be on the device, and be on the same page about consequences. If you're over your screen time limit, what happens? And if that consequence has to go into the other parent's home, you may have to have a conversation with your co-parent to say, look, I've grounded them from their iPads for 5 days. I know you're going to have the kids in 2 days, but ultimately that should be a discussion because you can't really impose rules in another parent's home. But the piece by contrast is don't forget to also reward your kids. So if kids are good with their screen time limits and without complaints, we can also reward them for staying within the rules.
Now, there is a cost with technology. It's not cheap, obviously, when you look at plans and Wi-Fi and things like that. So what are some of the things that should be discussed around the issue of cost of technology?
Well, of course, there's the first thing, which is the cost of the device itself. So how will that cost be allocated between the parents? It may not technically be within the child support purview. So how is that going to be shared? And are there financing options, or even to use options to spread out the cost of that phone or that device over the contract? Then, speaking of contracts, is the issue of if a contract is required for data or the cell phone use, then whose name is that contract going to be in, and how is the cost going to be allocated? You know, are the kids going to be required to contribute to some of that with allowance money? When you're purchasing your device, there are options for different brands. And if you can imagine, this is a big source of conflict between parents. Sometimes people get pretty stuck on their brands. Some people are Apple users or Android users or Microsoft users. And even to try to come up with ideas of what brand will be used if the cost is in fact going to be shared. And last is that question of data or Wi-Fi only. There are some devices that you don't need a data plan. And the question of if there is data, what's the cost around the data? Or is it going to be a Wi-Fi only device?
Now, Stephanie, what would the next steps be if parents want to come up with a specific plan when they are co-parenting kids who are going back and forth between different households and they want this technology plan in place?
Well, the first thing would be certainly to go onto YouTube and rewatch this video, because of course we went through a lot of things very quickly, and it would be really helpful if you could start and stop it and watch it with your co-parent and actually come up with proposals or agreements with respect to all of these kind of issues that we talked about. When I meet with parents to develop their parenting plan, I always talk about technology, and I always address these kinds of questions. So it's important to talk to your lawyer or your mediator about these kind of issues to make sure that that kind of a plan, if possible, can be in place between two homes. And one resource that I always recommend to my clients is a website called healthychildren.org. And if you search if you type into the search bar Family Media Plan, this is a website from the American Academy of Pediatrics where you can insert, it's a wizard, where you can insert your kids' ages and then kind of go through some of the agreements that you and your co-parent might want to reach with respect to technology in two homes.
All right, Stephanie, well, once again, lots of information in this. Yeah. And again, we encourage people to either check out your website or the Up a Notch Learning site for information related to this and all other things with divorce and separation. And Stephanie, once again, can you just give us the information as to how people can find you and find that information?
Sure. So anyone can, of course, always call our office, 780-875-2234 for more information on any of these topics. Our website is Henka Divorce, Henka divorce.ca, with lots of information about our legal and mediation services. And the one that, Stacey, you were referring to, upanotchlearning.com, that's our e-learning community with tons of free resources and some course content as well.
All right, Stephanie, well, thank you so much once again for joining us today, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you.
I'm speaking with Harold Claffey with Sask Elks Association. We're talking about the launch of the brand new Sask Elks Trucks and Bucks Lottery. What's this lottery all about?
Well, we're trying to raise money for our foundation. We were running three for $5 lotteries for quite a number of years, but the sales were falling off quite badly to the point where we were almost only breaking even on it. And we don't do all the work to break even. So we came up with the idea last year that maybe we could get in on the higher ticket item lottery. And we came up with this one. And we're giving away a truck. Everybody likes trucks.
And what was the process like for the Saskatchewan Elks Association to plan this lottery?
The Saskatchewan Elks Association is invited to send representatives from each lodge in Saskatchewan to a central administrative body that was founded in 1929. There's over 50 lodges in Saskatchewan, and there's about 30 at the average association meeting. And those 30 came up with a decision based on a proposal to increase the value of the lottery and to make it into what it is today.
And for people who aren't aware, can you tell me what the Saskatchewan Elks Association does on a normal basis?
We do things that individual lodges can't take on for themselves. For example, in the 1950s, local president in Prince Albert came up with the idea that there were not enough homes for senior citizens. So he started up homes for senior citizens in Prince Albert, brought the idea to the provincial association, and now we run homes in 8 small communities in Saskatchewan. And these are communities of a size that if there wasn't the Elks housing available, they might have to move to a bigger community. This keeps them within their families. We also run a health foundation where people can apply for funding if they have economic need for any financial needs for people 18 and over. And we have our National Fund for Children, which has been around for a long time and takes care of children's hearing needs, among other things. So we cover medical needs. What we are is community people helping community people. Each of our lodges is heavily involved in their local community and looks to beyond the local community to this provincial association and the provincial foundation to carry out our mission and vision.
And is this the first year that the Saskatchewan Elks Association has had this Trucks and Bucks lottery?
This is our launching year, our first year for the lottery, and we're hoping to do well because the prizes are very exciting and because we kind of could use the fundraising for the foundation so that we can do good work in the province.
Yes, and what are all the prizes that'll be a part of this lottery that residents can expect?
Do you like trucks? Everybody likes trucks. We are going to give away a brand new, fully equipped, nice Ford or Dodge half-ton, winner's choice, or $65,000 cash. The Ford is supplied by Wilkie Ford, Country Ford in Wilkie, and the Dodge is supplied by Nipawin Dodge Chrysler. And they're beautiful trucks with full features, including full power running boards, among other things.
And when's the deadline for people to buy tickets?
The early bird cutoff is on June 8th for a prize of $5,000 cash. And the main draw final ticket cutoff is at 11 p.m. on June 29th. And we're also running a 50-50 as an add-on to the main lottery. So if you buy a ticket package for the main lottery, you get to buy a second ticket package for our 50-50. And if we sell out, the prize is going to be $100,000. I don't know if you could use that kind of money, but I sure could.
And through COVID-19, how do you believe ticket sales will be from residents?
Well, everybody's at home looking at their computers, so go onto your computer and Google trucksandbucks.ca and look at our exciting website. It was designed by a professional and it tells the whole story of the lottery and of what the foundation stands for and what it supports. It's an extremely worthwhile cause, but not a really well-known one. So we're going on people's popularity and the knowledge of the Elks and of what we do for children coast to coast with our hearing focus and for our local communities. Let us continue doing it. Buy a ticket.
Perfect. Is there anything else you'd like to add for people to know about?
Tickets start at $20 for the truck lottery. You can get a ticket on a brand new pickup for $20. Try and match that anywhere. Up to the best deal is 50 tickets on the truck lottery and 75 tickets on the 50-50 for a total of $175. That's less than $2 a ticket. And that's the package that's selling best. So make sure you get your tickets quick because there's only so many available. We have a total of 3,880 tickets available for the big lottery. And they're going fast. Get yours now.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today, Harold.
You're welcome. Thanks for the publicity.
Thank you for joining us on Primetime Local News. Have a great rest of your night.